All right, well, welcome to episode 9 of C.A.R.s, Coffee, and Christ. It's our weekly roundtable discussion here at Cross Automotive Royale, and I am your host, Ross Turner. I serve as our corporate chaplain here and also the host of our podcast weekly. Well, in today's episode, we kind of take a break from our more spiritually minded conversations and also our shop talk conversations, and we kind of move now to just a fun conversation, kind of a lighthearted conversation, by answering the question, what's your coolest car experience? And we thought it'd be fun just to kind of think through some different ways of how we can answer that question. So things that came to my mind would be, maybe a racing experience, or perhaps just a car driving experience, or even a buying experience, or something that's, that we're not thinking about, or maybe a little all of the above as we kind of answer that question today. So it doesn't have to be limited to one experience. It could be multiple experiences. It could be multiple stories that we want to share today. So our guest today that we have Abby King with us today, who's our co-owner and COO of C.A.R. here, and Chris LaFond, who's one of our mechanics and techs today with us. And want to encourage you all, I've got a few myself, of just feel free to share a few stories of what separates some awesome experiences with vehicles from just the run-of-the-mill experiences that we all have every day, and of course the less than stellar experiences we've all had with vehicles too. We want to share some great highlights I think we have today to answer that question, what's your coolest car experience? So beyond just thinking through the normal experiences with vehicles, which again, the majority of my experiences with vehicles are challenging most of the time, just trying to make it through with functional vehicles. So having a fun experience is definitely easy to find for me in my life. I'm like, that was a great one. But I thought it would be good to first kind of stop and define what makes something like a cool experience versus just all the normal experiences of vehicles or just the functional experiences with vehicles. So in your minds, again, this is a little subjective, right? There's not one or two main things, but I think there are some things for each person that really makes something kind of a cool experience versus just the normal experience with vehicles. So for each of you, what might be what separates an experience to become like a really cool experience with a vehicle from your normal functional experiences? Who wants to start us off this morning with that question?
I'll step back.
All right, Abby.
I think when it comes to like a fun experience is the experience memorable? And did the experience like get your heart racing?
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Because we could probably all share experiences where your heart was racing in the bad way. I've been in a handful of accidents.
Yeah.
But when I think of like good experiences and like adventurous things, my mind always goes to road trips.
Yeah.
Because my family, we weren't a big car family,
yeah.
right? So when I think of my history with cars, I think of long road trips across the country, where my dad had an old pickup and it had the shell on the back. And so me and my sister would get shoved back there with the luggage, there's shag carpet on the bottom. And, I just remember those things as being fun. Not safe by any means, of course, but that was like the 80s and 90s. So safety was, an afterthought. But I think of that, and I think of like one of, when I was older, like a fun road trip that me and my sister took together. And we went to the Grand Canyon. But on the way, we stopped over at the Glen Canyon Dam, and we were going to get a canoe and basically get a backhaul to the dam and then canoe our way back. And it's beautiful scenery it's the Colorado River, and it's like where Horseshoe Bend is and stuff. So it's beautiful, 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 right? But in the process of that, we're driving my little Toyota Corolla, and we are late to picking up the canoe and getting it to the backhaul station, right? And so here we are grabbing the canoe, strapping it to the top of a Corolla, and I'm pretty sure it was only on there with like one ratchet strap.
That's all you need.
Yeah, and my sister is driving down the highway 90 miles an hour. Like, no lie, not exaggerating. And we both have our hands outside the window holding onto this canoe. Like, totally reckless, totally, like, kind of heart racing in the terrifying way, but also like, no, we are going to go have fun kind of way. And so that's what I think of. You know, I think of those kind of adventures and those lasting like core memories that you have from growing up. Yeah. And that's kind of like when we're looking at our cars now, like me and Joshua have built our cars for those road trips and for those adventures. Yeah. And it's fun being able to pass down memories for our kids, you know, because we'll drive across country and go camping and being able for them to have these experiences too, you know, and trying to limit how much screen time they have in those so that they can experience the boredom of driving in a car for hours or, you know, falling asleep and reading books and coloring and all these things just in a more safe way than I experienced in the back of an S10.
Yeah, so that's awesome, Abby. It sounds like to me what separates it for you, one is a little bit of excitement to some level, but certainly connection, you know, is what the vehicle kind of helps foster, helps create, and separates that from just your normal run-of-the-mill like functionality, whatever. And it's not just, you know, where you're going and who you're with, but the vehicle's part of that. And I think connection together for that, also with the excitement of what was needed or what happened as well, is something that stands out to you to make it a cool vehicle experience. That's awesome. I love that. Chris, anything from you? What separates it for you?
I was thinking about that right before the podcast started, and I'm like, well, what cool experiences have I had? And I've built a lot of hot rods and classic cars, and I've done it, you know, half my life or more. Yeah. And I had a gentleman actually it was a phone call I got. He had a Chevelle that his father gave him when he was 17, 18, right when he was, you know, started driving. He got rear-ended by a trash truck. Wow. A bad wreck. It totaled the car. Yeah. And the car had been in the family since it was brand new. And he was devastated, and he was having a hard time finding people to get a quote to do the repair because it had been rear-ended and totaled. It wasn't drivable, so it was sitting in his backyard. Yeah. The insurance company wanted to basically, you know, go to salvage. Yeah. But it was a car that had been in the family since it was brand new, and so this is more of a, I guess, a service story than a personal story, but it's a memorable one because, you know, he couldn't get anybody to come out to the house to assess the car. He couldn't put it on a tow truck and, you know, drag it all over the city to find somebody to... Yeah. So, you know, I ended up going to his house, and he was like, hey, is there any way we could, you know, save this car? And I want to pass this car to my child, you know? And so we took it in, and we basically had to cut the car in half. Wow. You know, to replace the back of it. The quarters and even the back of the roof was... basically destroyed, and it was just really memorable to me because you know, he didn't whatever it took to save this car, it was that important to him. Didn't matter how much time, you know, or any of that, and we took the project on even though it was a pretty big bite to swallow. It took us almost a year to get that thing back to where it was pre-accident. But I just remember him and his father coming to pick it up when it was done, and I mean they were literally in the parking lot crying. You know, they thought their baby was, you know, not going to be salvageable. A handful of places just didn't want to even attempt it. And I just remember how much joy it brought me and my guys to see, you know, him and his father out there in the parking lot picking this thing up. And, you know, he was like, it looks better than it did before it got wrecked. No one wanted to even attempt to save this thing. And we were so upset. You know, it had been in the family since 69. It was a 69 Chevelle. Wow. And it brought me a lot of joy to bring that car back to their family. And there's probably a grandson right now driving this thing to high school. You know, that was not much, you know, not exactly a personal car story, but it's just one that's always stuck with me.
That's great, Chris.
You know.
Yeah, that's awesome. But again, like I said, like what stands out is what makes it cool. You know, that's the point, is that, and it's interesting to hear you all what that looks like for you, I think, you know, versus kind of what maybe someone might think is a cool car experience. I love how you're drawing out what's cool for you is the heart behind it, the longevity behind it, but also the service behind it, how it's elevated with the way that was connecting with someone's, you know, their own life.
Right.
And that you were getting to be a part of that in a real significant way. That's really neat, kind of how that makes that a cool experience for you, given that that's also your livelihood.
Right.
You know?
It did. Yeah. It was like I said, it was a year-long repair. Yeah. So they would come by once a week or once every 2 weeks. We actually got to know the family in the process of the repair. And, you know, the first couple times they came to check on it, you know, we were literally, you know, chopping this car.
Oh yeah, you're literally.
And they're like, you know, I could see that they're nervous. You know, they're like, "Are you, or is this going to be safe?" And this, that, and the other. And we had to
tear it down before you build
it back up. And as far as we had to tear that car apart, there wasn't a lot left from, you know, the original. But as they'd come by, you know, they'd come by and bring dinner, and I could just see it every time they came by and saw the progress. You know, their anxiety was going down, and they just became kind of a part of our family.
Yeah, that's really neat, Chris. I love hearing just the qualities of what separate that already for you all. It'll definitely kind of take the episode maybe a different direction people think from what they're listening to. I mean, for me, you know, not being a car person, but having owned many in my life, and my parents, for me, being, you know, we're lower middle class family growing up. The coolest experience, I know this sounds boring, but the coolest experience for us was getting our first minivan as a family, because we had these extremely unreliable junker cars for most of our family's life. And I remember it was in high school and got a minivan brand new for the first time ever. It was like the first time I've ever seen a new vehicle like in my life, and seeing how reliable that thing was. That thing lasted for like 20 years. I learned how to drive. I got my permit and my license on a minivan. So that's kind of like weird and silly if you think about that, but that's what we had. But for me, that was like a really cool experience, driving something new, you know, instead of just driving something used or old or renovated or whatever. And that stuck with me a lot, of like, wow, you need to really value something that works, you know, and when you invest in it, it's better to invest in it if you can for the long term, instead of just finding something that's, you know, that's half used or whatever. And so that's always stuck out to me, along with, I think, connection, like you were saying, Abby, that for me, and it'll go into a little bit to my stories later, but the connection with my family in that minivan was very, very important. And through my early high school, late high school, probably I would say all 4 years of that time of my life in early college, that was an actual really important thing for me, that connection, because my family is a fairly disconnected family. We're not like, we're just not very close when it comes to like touching base and communicating. So I think connection stands out for me on like what's really an awesome experience compared to normal things. I'm a fairly functional person, so I think that was really meaningful to me. So reliability, I would probably say, and connection would create those experiences for me. I've had a few experiences also in cars that were like fast and kind of cool, but what stands out more to me were those reliable experiences and those connection experiences. So I think, you know, hearing those things about what stands out to make a cool experience will probably be interesting as we kind of now get into the question, like, what were those experiences for you? If you have to identify like one or two or more, whatever, if you say, hey, that was a really unique experience for me, what would those be for you? Like I said, it could be a racing experience. You don't have to be in the vehicle, I guess. You could be watching it, you know, driving it, of course, buying it, all the above. But I thought we could now kind of pinpoint a few of those experiences and share a couple of those, even if they're stories, whatever you like to do, and just answer that question, what's been your cool car experience or experiences? So who wants to jump into maybe pinpoint one of those experiences to share.
I'll jump in.
Okay, Chris.
My grandfather had a red 64.5 Mustang when I was a child. And I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house as a child. And he always had this baby in his garage on a battery tender. He'd go start it up once a week, but it was like a mint condition Mustang. And, I'm 8, 9, 10. Every time I'd go over and visit, I just wanted to sit in the garage and stare at it. I'd, ask him to come out and start it just to hear it run.
Yeah.
I'd find turtle wax. And didn't need it, but I just wanted to rub it on the car and rub it off the car like a Karate Kid.
Oh, yes.
And I'd wax that car every time I'd go visit him, and he'd laugh. I remember him laughing at me like, are you having fun? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you waxed this thing last time you came over and visited, but it was so beautiful to me sitting there. And it's a memory just from childhood, I think, that kind of started my process of loving, especially the classic cars. I remember going to Brahms in it. He'd take us to Brahms in it, and I think that was probably part of my first, young man passion for cars, and that leads back to just my closeness with my grandfather. It was the way we would bond. He knew I loved the cars, so he was, waiting for me to ask. He knew it was coming. I'm gonna want to go get ice cream in the Mustang. So it was just a good memory, and probably my first memory of a car not being for utility, more of a bonding experience with my grandfather.
That's awesome, Chris. I love hearing that. And that's neat to see how not only a lot of things happened in that experience that made it cool. One, connection to your grandfather, bonding over that. But like you said, seeing it for more than just utility. There's more to it than that. And then it also created a passion for you, for your vocation too. Kind of neat to see kind of how, all those things happened with that experience. And then, got to throw Brahms in. Praise God for Brahms. I love Brahms, But so that's really neat kind of hearing that experience and kind of how that's kind of a core memory and value and passion kind of coming from that. Pretty cool and awesome muscle car. Awesome.
Ray's actually got a model of a 69 Mustang in his office. It's the only model car he's got. And every time I walk in his office and I look at it, that entire memory replays in my memory, and I'm like, I spent a lot of time around it. It looks almost identical to my grandfather's too, so I'll have to share that story with him one day, and he'll be like, well, I wondered why you always stare at that model car.
That's cool. It holds a lot. To it.
A lot of memories.
That's awesome. Abby, anything you want to pinpoint that was kind of just a really cool experience for you with the vehicle, and it could be more than one, but love for you to share.
As far as an experience, I went to my first monster truck. Really, it was I think 2 years ago. And that was a whole different experience. Being able to take the kids and being totally unprepared and covering their ears because we didn't even cross our minds to get ear protection for these small children. And just being able to experience that and be as amazed as my kids. Because it's hey, this is my first time seeing this too, But what I love hearing about what each of us has kind of touched on is that when you are talking about cars, there is that point of connection, right? Yeah. Whether it is, with the customer, with the Chevelle, whether it's hey, we're together as a family in a minivan, whether it's road trips. Even thinking of random things on the drive here, I was thinking, okay, well, what are different experiences that I've had in cars, and the things that come to mind are always when you're with somebody else. Even as silly as in college, we didn't have co-ed dorms or anything. So if you were with, someone of the opposite sex, you wanted some alone time, you went parking.
That's where you go.
Right? You went cruising. Even in high school, it was have all your friends jump in the car together and go to Taco Bell or wherever. So it's these memories, even if they're small and nothing like huge and impactful, they usually do involve other people. And I love that. And I think that that's also why you have like this whole idea of like car community is because they do bring people together. You know, it's like you don't go drag racing by yourself. No. You go against other people, right? Like you want to show off your car to other people. You know, some people like caravan and you know, in the overland community, sometimes they'll go as a group, right? Like it's rarely just like, I mean, unless you're a complete hermit, it's rarely just like one person working on their car and never like involving anybody. Right? Like, and so that's what I love about cars. Like, even if it is a minivan, if it's a Jeep, if it's a classic car, a muscle car, like it does bring people together. You know, it's like the experience I shared earlier about me and my sister. Like, when I think of me and my sister, like that is such a fond memory that comes up and comes to mind, you know, and making cross-country trips, you know, in the back of a Jimmy with my sister and this rocking chair that we were transporting to a family reunion. And like things like that, it's never in solitude. So
I love those, again, the great answers and so different in many ways, you know, and mine are a little different too. In that, but it's cool kind of seeing what those experiences are, you know, in your lives. You know, mine are a little different, some connection in a sense to what you all have brought up, but probably I'd say three. They're all a little different. The first one is, I think, like I mentioned with the minivan, there was a 2-week trip my family took when I was in 9th grade to Colorado, and it was the first time we ever went anywhere. And we never traveled by plane, like ever. And the first time I was ever on a plane was I was in college. So my family wasn't a traveling family. It was the first actual like real trip we took that I can really remember deeply. And it was a camping trip, and we went to see all the national parks out west in Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, and I think, all the way over into Nevada even. I think we traveled that far. So it was like 2.5 weeks, and it was all in this minivan that we just bought. And it really cemented for me, like, this is what a family does. You know, I think for me, what was so cool about it is that, you know, you're in a family, you're a younger person. You're not really aware of how these things work. You're just kind of in it. You're like, okay, you know, what does this mean? You're trying to figure out what meaning is in these things. But that really helped me understand, like, it's a really togetherness. And also you do things that are more than just functional. You go have fun together, you know, and you go to explore together. And all those things of that trip were super memorable for me. But I remember reading like 10 books in that minivan. And that was a very cool experience for me because I didn't get to experience a whole lot of that kind of connection growing up. And that really helped me, I think, experience that in a super deep way. It was very memorable. And so much so that that's kind of my hope for my kids. You know, they're almost old enough to go on trips. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. They're not there yet for long van trips. But, you know, a few more years in, it's coming. You know, my oldest daughter's 10. You know, she's probably, by the time she gets to be in, you know, middle school, high school, it's probably the time we can start doing something like that because the kids will be able to sit still long enough to go. So that's one really, I think, cool experience I've had. The second one is very simple, but it's still pretty awesome to me, is the first time someone gave me a car. You know, again, you know, in ministry, you're not making much money. So the reality is you're just trying to get by every month. And I remember after working in ministry for 8 or 9 years and just having a vehicle that was like breaking down over and over, I finally sold it to a kid in my youth group that I was leading, and he bought it and promptly got it stolen, strangely enough. But you know, so I didn't have a car because I couldn't use his car anymore. It just wasn't working, and gave it away basically. But the church I was working at the time just surprised me and gave me a very functional Chevy Cobalt for $1. And again, I barely could fit my family in that car. I barely could get them in. I mean, it was like a 4-person. 2-person. It really was meant for 2 people. But, you know, we got 4 people in there at the time. It was like a clown vehicle. But I am so thankful for that and got to use that car for 3 years before selling it off. and was just very grateful for that reliability and that generosity that I got to experience there. And I probably would say the last, kind of a very interesting thing to kind of share as a cool story, but was a movie I watched. Kind of very well-known movie now called Gran Torino, and that famous movie Clint Eastwood about a car, about Gran Torino, and it's a very kind of deep movie, like a traditional Clint Eastwood movie is, but it's representing Detroit, and it represents basically the American way of life, and the clash between new generations, new ethnicities, the clash of the melting pot, and being challenged to, like, is this truly the American way? Or do we need to grow? It was a very profound movie for me to watch. And he's in there cleaning in his perfect Gran Torino in his garage in his neighborhood that's changed over time. And suddenly it looks different to him than it used to. And is he going to adapt, or is he going to resist? Like, that's what the whole movie's about. And it's around this vehicle, this kind of nostalgia. Are we able to grow from that too? It's a very profound movie, and it really made me think about being an American. It made me think about what that means, and that was a really kind of a cool experience to watch that movie. Also kind of cool because the other main character is a priest, and so he has to kind of respect the older generation and had to respect kind of what this man's life has been about. So it's a really profound movie in a lot of ways, but it's about a car, and it's about American culture about a car and evolving. So it's really interesting, and I thought, like, man, that is a profound movie. And that was the first time I think I watched an Eastwood movie where he was the director, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then he had a bunch of hits after that. But I could go on about other things, but those are three for me that stand out, that are real different, that stick with me. And any others that you all want to share? Yeah. Those are three for me, Chris.
Yeah, I'll share one. When I was in high school, I was a senior, and I had a friend of mine that also worked on cars, and I was working on cars as a senior in high school. And me and him split a really cheap one-bay shop on the not-so-good side of town because it was affordable. Mm-hmm. And, we had friends, and some were in football, a couple even went to the NFL. And, other friends that had other hobbies, but we were the car hobby kids in high school. Yeah. And I just remember, all of our high school friends kind of collecting at our shop after school because they just didn't really have anything to do. Yeah. So they'd come by the shop and see what we're working on. We didn't even know what we were doing. We thought we did, but we didn't. We were messing up more than we were fixing. And, but it was cool that everybody would come after school, park their cars. Yeah. We were in a commercial area, so they could play their music as loud as they wanted, have the freedom of burnouts, no one cared, so it was like a bunch of high school students being able to almost do the cruise scene, in front of our shop place, and I'm sure our neighbors probably hated us, but just a good memory of thinking back, like, well, I wasn't in football, I wasn't in this, that, and the other. We just
that was what you did.
Yeah, it wasn't even a business. It was like we needed to do a little bit of work to pay the rent, and the rest of it was fun. So those were good memories.
That's great, Chris. I mean, then you guys even had the ingenuity to like put together the money to get that, and I mean that's still pretty awesome.
Yeah, I want to say this thing was like $400 a month or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, still though, that's kind of, I mean, that is a cool, that's really cool that you kind of showed that ingenuity and that entrepreneurship to do that. That's pretty awesome. I mean, a lot of teenagers are just trying to make their shift at their job, I mean, so that's pretty cool to kind of hear that. And like you said, you were kind of like the hangout.
Yeah, we were the hangout
spot. The cruise spot.
Yeah, everybody started coming to the shop instead of going to the little cruise. Strip. Even on the weekends, we were there on the weekends because it was, a safe place for everybody to come hang out in their car.
Well, there's probably a lot of neighbors that were probably, not always enthusiastic, but I'm sure there's a lot of parents that were grateful that they knew where their kids were.
It was an actual commercial area, so most of those people went home at 5. Yeah. We weren't getting out of school till 3:30 or 4. So we were kind of opening about the time most of the neighbors were closing down. They knew what we were doing.
You're up to. They're like, time to get home.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, that's I really appreciate y'all sharing those stories and those experiences about kind of what is a cool experience to you. And I think we've tapped a little bit into it. We'll kind of finish with, why do we want cool experiences, And I think it's more than just the thrill of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, even Abby brought it up. It was interesting how you said this. It's never really alone. There are certain car companies or vehicle companies that their promotions is kind of isolated individual. I think of Lincoln particularly, that just these isolated individuals riding in cars. That's not really how people experience cars,
Right.
to be really honest. And I think there's a certain type of person that they're looking for. Obviously, they know what they're trying to do there for that company. But the majority of companies say it's more than functionality. There's a few that might say, hey, this rides, this goes on for a long time. But those are not the typical commercials for vehicle sales, right? The typical is something much more than functionality, right?
Mm-hmm.
It goes beyond that. So what are we trying to connect to, basically, in this last question? What are we trying to get at when we are looking for cool experiences, for things that are more than just functionality, utility? We're looking for more than that. Now, certainly not less than that. They got to be functional. They have to be utility based, right? They got to work. But we're looking for more than that. We've touched a little bit on it, but it might be good for us to kind of focus more on that to finish off. So what are we looking for with these kind of cool experiences that go beyond functional utility kind of stuff with vehicles? What do y'all think?
I'll jump
Chris?
in. Like I was saying, when we had the shop in high school, it's just the car has always been a way to bond with friends and family.
Yeah.
You're always going to use it to gravitate towards something you're doing. So you've got to have a car to get to where you're going. You got to have a car to see people you want to see.
Yeah.
You got to have a car to enjoy vacations. And then if the car can provide something over the utility, and now you're tapping into something more enjoyable than just the utility of getting from A to B.
Yeah.
And I think especially as you get older, I'm obviously in the industry, so it's a little different for me, but even from like as a child, you remember all your experiences with your friends and family, relating to cars. Definitely as a teenager, it's your first taste of freedom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You turn 16, 17, you get your license. Those four wheels they open a new door in your life to freedom that you're not used to experiencing, and hopefully you responsibly experience it.
Hopefully it's good for you.
Hopefully it's good for you, and then
you'll lose your freedom in prison.
Yeah, and then as a young adult, you're using that car to go see friends and get to your first job or go to college or so and then even past that, you're like, well, I want a car that I had when I was younger, and like a baby boomer age range. Their cars are these classics that we're restoring, and a lot of that brings back the nostalgia that was built from their childhood with these cars. So I'm hoping that when I'm in my 60s, I'm not restoring like Ford Focuses.
Yeah, I hope not.
This is it's got to stop somewhere.
It's got to stop.
And the cars that were built in the 80s when I was younger weren't collectible at all, and here they come. Now these 80s styles trucks and stuff are becoming so
they're being transported in the future in a way.
We'll see how we'll see when that ends. I'm hoping at some point we cut it off at like 95.
Has to be a line somewhere. Has to be a line of what's nostalgia,
what's going to be nostalgic to my children.
That's right.
What are they going to want to see on the road still, because it reminds them of their childhood.
Well, I love what you bring up, Chris, again, like the idea that it's not just something to do, it's something to bond over. And I think for men, it's really hard to express yourself in a way that comes across meaningfully. It really is. And I think when you understand, hey, I share a passion with my dad or with my grandfather, it's easier to share what you mean when you do that together. Everyone kind of might have heard this at some point, but men relate side by side. And we kind of have to find a way to do that. We can't just be side by side. There's something we got to do together. And that's a really, classic pastime of how to bond as men with others. Again, most men relate through what they do, not what they say. And so I think that bonding piece is really, really important. So I love how you bring that out, because it's more than just finding something to do or like, hey, we're not that, we're doing this. But you're bonding over that, right? And you're bringing people in that weren't part of that endeavor that just come. So there's a bonding kind of, something goes beyond just we're doing this to get this car working, right? So I love that. That's really good. And nostalgia too. But I'd agree. You got to draw the line.
You got to draw the line somewhere. It's got to stop.
Not everything's worth restoring.
Yes.
These are vehicles, not people. Okay, right. Abby, what about you? What might be some of the reasons you think that go beyond into the normal, into the cool, and why do we want those things? You think?
People find identity in their cars. They connect to the memories like we've talked about.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is the cars that we're working on here to not just be like the show car or the car that gets restored and then sits in the garage because someone is so afraid to drive it.
That's right.
Like, I would love to see these classics be daily drivers.
Yeah.
Or, and have that mind shift of like, hey, let's make it reliable so that you feel good having it as your daily driver so that you can have those memories and experiences not be just in your garage or only coming out at a show or only coming out at a Cars and Coffee, but I mean, we spend so much of our lives driving and commuting, right? Especially like, unless you're in a big city, like you are spending 20, 30, 45 minutes each way to work, right? In your car. Let it be something that isn't just functional, let it be something that you could sit in and be like, oh, I've got, I remember this, or, well, hey, all these other people and their, normal, sedans, they're all looking at me thinking, hey, that commute is a little more enjoyable than mine.
That looks a little more fun.
I would love that. And I would love to see more people do that.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Chris. I really hope I don't see any, 2001 Corollas in here being restored.
10 years.
Exactly.
I think nostalgia should at some point stop. For some people, but I love how you're saying, hey, there should be some element of fun to the driving experience, right? That goes beyond just the functionality of it, right? There's bonding, of course, to and with vehicles as well. I think marketers are geniuses. They know what they're talking about, right? Again, every company, when you think through what they're promoting, again, I think if Ford is promoting this kind of durability, it's promoting American life, it's promoting like overcoming, it's, kind of branded itself as this kind of reliability through kind of rock climbing experience, right? With trucks, right? Even though they have lots of Focuses out there. They never promote those, by the way, but they're always promoting these trucks. These are expensive trucks, right? You think of minivans, they're always promoting the family going to the beach. It's never the family just driving around. They're always going to vacation. They're always going somewhere that goes beyond getting to practice, to go something that's connection-based, right? I think what we're looking for, most likely through the vehicle ultimately, is not just reliability, but beyond that, we're looking for connection, we're looking for bonding, we're looking for our connection to the past, but also connection to an adventure that's to come, right? And I think because as people, that's what we're made really for. We're not made just to be stuck in history. We're made to make it. We're made to kind of live into the future with an adventure. And I think that's a big part of our company, is that we want to build your adventure, because I think God made us for adventure. I mean, He really did. There's a sense of, we're not locked into a moment. We're living into something that's the future. I think cars and vehicles, when we really think about it, we're wanting more than just to get us from one place to another. We're looking for connection. When you're younger, you're looking for belonging. You're looking for freedom from constraints, right? So sometimes, I love how you said, Chris, it connects to the need for freedom. And hopefully we'll use that responsibly. Not always, but hopefully we will use that responsibly. But as you get older, you've got freedom, right? Most of the time you found where you belong, but you're looking for connection, right? When you get older. That's why people are so connected to their homes or their vehicles from the past or an item in their house, is because that's what they're connected to. They're looking for meaning and for connection in those ways. So I think, again, car commercials say a lot to us, and they show, hey, we're looking for more than this. I remember as a kid watching some of these commercials, like, what are they trying to sell me here? Like, what is this? Because they're saying this is more than a vehicle, right? This is connecting me to something deeper than that. So I think connecting to bonding to people, to community, to freedom, to adventure, that's probably what we're saying. That's really cool, right? That's really what's cool about experiences with vehicles ultimately. Not just thankfully they got me here to there. We're thankful, but that's kind of the bare minimum of what we hope for. But I think we're looking for more than that, which makes restoring certain ones worthwhile, and building other ones worthwhile, and and buying certain ones worthwhile too. So y'all, thanks for a great episode this morning. That was a lot of fun getting to hear your stories and kind of what stands out to you, and let me share my own as well. And again, for our viewers, if you have a story that you'd like to share or something that was a cool experience for you, please feel free to comment in the comment section. Leave us a comment about your own. We'd love to hear about that. And again, for those that are interested, you can find everything about business inquiries, local partnerships for ministry work, or just merchandise, whatever else you have any questions for our company, crossautomotiveroyale.com. It is on there. Hope to see you next time for episode 10. Until then, signing off.